T-Rex shook theaters in 1993, something far more uncertain was happening behind the scenes. One of the strangest truths about Jurassic Park is that it was originally designed to rely mostly on stop-motion animation. The groundbreaking CGI that changed cinema forever was not even Plan A. What happened during production quietly rewrote film history, and many of the real turning points were kept surprisingly low-key for years. The dinosaurs were supposed to be stop-motion. When Steven Spielberg began production, the dinosaurs were being built using traditional go-motion animation techniques. Veteran effects legend Phil Tippett was leading that effort. Full miniature models were being prepared and tests were underway. Then Industrial Light and Magic produced a secret CGIT, a Rex test that moved with startling realism. Spielberg reportedly froze when he saw it. The shift happened almost overnight. Tippett famously joked that he had become extinct. The decision effectively ended large-scale stop-motion for realistic creatures in mainstream film. For years, this pivot was treated as a smooth upgrade, but internally it caused massive restructuring and anxiety among artists who feared their craft was finished. The T-Rex robot constantly malfunctioned in the rain. The massive animatronic Tyrannosaurus built by Stan Winston was a mechanical marvel. It weighed around 9 tons and was designed to move fluidly, but during the night rain sequence, water seeped into its internal systems. The result was terrifying. The T-Rex would shake violently between takes because the hydraulics absorbed moisture and expanded. Crew members were sometimes afraid to stand near it. At one point, it reportedly moved unexpectedly while technicians were adjusting it. The rain scene looks controlled and cinematic on screen, but behind the camera it was chaos. The weather created realism, yet nearly compromised safety. That malfunctioning beast actually made the scene more convincing. The famous T-Rex roar is a mix of unexpected animals. The T-Rex roar was not a single animal recording. Sound designer Gary Rydstrom blended multiple sources, including baby elephant squeals, tiger growls, and even an alligator gurgle. What is rarely discussed is that the breathing sounds were inspired by recordings of whales. The low rumble you hear before the attack is partially slowed marine audio. The reason was psychological. Whale tones create unease because they feel ancient and enormous. The final roar is less about volume and more about layered frequencies designed to hit human instinct. The sound was engineered scientifically to trigger primal fear. It was not random creativity. It was acoustic strategy. The raptors almost looked completely different. Early velociraptor designs were bulkier and closer to traditional reptile depictions. Then, new fossil discoveries suggested a more bird-like posture and intelligence. The production team quietly updated proportions mid-development. Limbs were lengthened, movement became sharper and more agile. At the time, feather evidence was not widely accepted, so the film stopped short of adding plumage. Interestingly, paleontologists later argued that real velociraptors were smaller than portrayed. The film's version was closer in size to Deinonychus. The name stayed Velociraptor because it sounded more dramatic. That branding decision shaped pop culture's perception of dinosaurs for decades. Hurricane Iniki hit during filming. During location shooting in Hawaii, Hurricane Iniki struck the island of Kauai. Cast and crew were forced to shelter in a hotel as the storm tore through the area. Ironically, the hurricane damage helped the production. Certain destroyed landscape elements added authenticity to the film's jungle chaos. The crew had to rebuild parts of the set while also assisting with local recovery efforts. For years, this was treated as a dramatic footnote. In reality, it disrupted schedules and caused genuine fear among the team. Nature mirrored the film's theme. Humans had lost control, both in fiction and in real life. The kitchen scene was a technical gamble. The tense kitchen sequence with the raptors stalking the children was one of the last major set pieces completed. Steven Spielberg wanted the dinosaurs to move with a terrifying mix of intelligence and silence. The floor reflections and stainless steel surfaces made it extremely difficult to blend practical effects with CGI. Early tests revealed the raptors looked fake under bright lighting. The solution was to dim the set and rely heavily on shadows and reflections. That stylistic choice became one of the film's most suspenseful moments. What few people knew at the time was how close the scene came to being simplified. Technical limitations almost forced a rewrite. Instead, creative lighting tricks turned a potential flaw into a masterclass in tension. The sick Triceratops was almost cut entirely. The Triceratops scene was considered expendable during editing because it did not advance the plot. Studio executives reportedly suggested trimming it for pacing. Spielberg resisted because he believed the emotional connection mattered. The animatronic Triceratops was enormous and required multiple operators inside the body. The breathing effect came from inflatable mechanisms that rose and fell beneath the rubber skin. That gentle exhale is what gives the creature life. What audiences rarely realized is that the scene was shot partly as a test of realism. If viewers believed in a calm herbivore up close, they would believe the predators later. It was a quiet technical experiment disguised as a character moment. The Dilophosaurus was fictionalized. The small, frilled Dilophosaurus that attacks Dennis Nedry is not scientifically accurate. Real Dilophosaurus were much larger and had no evidence of venom-spitting frills. The creative team intentionally exaggerated its features to create a unique on-screen personality. The frill was inspired by lizards, like the frilled dragon. The venom concept was added to avoid repetitive biting attacks. For years, many viewers assumed the depiction was based on fact. Paleontologists often had to correct the misconception in classrooms. The film quietly reshaped public dinosaur knowledge. This artistic liberty was rarely emphasized in early marketing. The creature became iconic, despite being mostly invented. The glass of water was a practical effect. The iconic shot of ripples forming in a cup of water before the T-Rex attack was achieved without CGI. The effect was created by placing a guitar string beneath the dashboard and plucking it rhythmically. The vibrations traveled through the set and into the water. The shot was simple but required precise tuning to achieve natural ripples. Spielberg wanted a subtle warning rather than loud music. The idea came from imagining how heavy footsteps would travel through the ground. The simplicity of the trick contrasts with the massive animatronics and digital breakthroughs elsewhere in the film. Sometimes the smallest effect creates the biggest suspense. Jeff Goldblum's shirt scene was improvised. The now legendary moment of Ian Malcolm reclining shirtless was not originally framed as humor. Jeff Goldblum suggested loosening his posture to emphasize the character's chaotic philosophy. Spielberg agreed to make the injury moment feel oddly relaxed rather than dramatic. The open shirt became symbolic of Malcolm's unpredictability. It was not planned as an iconic image. The pose happened quickly on set. Years later, it became one of the most recognizable stills in film history. What began as a spontaneous character choice turned into pop culture legend. Sometimes accidents define legacy more than strategy. The film premiered while Spielberg was directing another movie. While Jurassic Park was finishing post-production, Steven Spielberg was already deep into filming Schindler's List. He was in Poland shooting emotionally devastating scenes while his dinosaur epic was being finalized back in the United States. Spielberg reportedly watched early visual effects footage through satellite transmissions. He would review dinosaur shots at night after filming intense Holocaust sequences during the day. The emotional contrast was extreme. Few major directors have ever released two culturally seismic films in the same year, let alone while physically on another continent. For years, this overlap was mentioned casually, but the logistical strain was immense. One film represented technological wonder. The other confronted historical horror. Both demanded perfection simultaneously. The T-Rex paddock attack was completely rewritten. The T-Rex breakout scene looks meticulously planned, but it was restructured late in production. Early versions were more straightforward and less suspense-driven. Spielberg decided the sequence needed a slower build. The decision to remove background music during the first moments heightened tension. Composer John Williams had written cues that were ultimately trimmed. Silence became more powerful than orchestration. The rain, the flickering lights, and the distant thud of footsteps carried the scene. The rewrite delayed the dinosaur reveal, making anticipation unbearable. That structural change was not widely discussed at the time. It transformed the scene into one of cinema's most analyzed suspense sequences. The spitting dinosaur used shaving cream. For the Dilophosaurus venom effect, the production experimented with different liquid mixtures. The final substance included water blended with thickening agents to create texture. The spray had to appear forceful, yet controlled. Crew members tested materials that would not damage cameras or injure actors. In some takes, the substance behaved unpredictably under lighting. Adjustments were made to viscosity to achieve a believable splatter pattern. It looks effortless on screen, but achieving that consistency required multiple trials. The effect was part puppetry and part practical fluid dynamics. The realism depended as much on chemistry as on performance. The raptors were performed by human actors in suits, while CGI was groundbreaking. Several raptor shots were accomplished using full-body suits operated by stunt performers. These suits were built with articulated limbs and detailed textures. The performers inside had limited visibility and endured intense heat under studio lights. Movements had to feel animalistic rather than theatrical. Coordinating these practical shots with digital inserts required frame-precise planning. Viewers often assume every dinosaur movement was computer-generated. In reality, the blend of physical performance and CGI created the illusion. That hybrid method was a transitional step in film history. It bridged traditional creature acting with digital innovation. The film almost used a different logo. The now iconic skeletal T-Rex logo was adapted from the novel's cover art by Michael Crichton. Early marketing concepts explored more colorful designs featuring living dinosaurs. Universal executives ultimately chose the stark black and red skeletal emblem. The minimalism felt bold and authoritative. It conveyed scientific authority rather than cartoon spectacle. That branding decision shaped merchandise and global recognition. The logo became one of the most identifiable movie symbols ever created. What was nearly a vibrant, illustrated dinosaur instead became a fossil silhouette. Simplicity defined the franchise identity. The raptors were nicknamed the Big One for a reason. On set, the main raptor antagonist was referred to as the Big One. The nickname was not just script dialogue, it became shorthand among crew members for the animatronic and stunt versions that required extra attention. The idea was to give one raptor a distinct personality. Slight posture changes and subtle head tilts were built into its performance. Phil Tippett helped refine behavioral patterns so it would feel like a calculating predator rather than a random monster. That extra character detail was rarely highlighted in marketing, yet it changed how audiences perceived dinosaur intelligence. The Big One was not just an animal, it felt strategic. That perception helped elevate the raptors into horror icons rather than simple creatures. Samuel L. Jackson's death scene was never shot. Ray Arnold's dramatic death was originally scripted as an on-screen sequence. Samuel L. Jackson was supposed to film a tense chase and attack moment. Hurricane disruptions and scheduling conflicts prevented the scene from being completed. Instead, the film implies his fate off-screen. His severed arm reveal became more shocking than a full attack would have been. The absence of the scene forced creative editing decisions. Spielberg leaned into suspense and suggestion rather than spectacle. Years later, Jackson joked that he never got to run from a dinosaur. The unseen death became more memorable precisely because it was never shown. The CGI took longer than expected and nearly delayed release. When Industrial Light and Magic committed to full digital dinosaurs, the team entered uncharted territory. Rendering times were extreme for the early 1990s. Some shots required hours per frame. The production schedule tightened as post-production advanced. There was genuine concern that unfinished effects might compromise the release date. Engineers had to develop new software tools mid-production. What appeared revolutionary on screen came from sleepless nights inside computer labs. The technology had not been built yet. It was created for this film. That level of risk is rarely emphasized when discussing the movie's success. The dinosaurs were not just characters. They were a leap into the unknown. The lawyer's death was inspired by real fear. The scene where Donald Gennaro abandons the children and hides in a restroom was crafted to highlight human cowardice under pressure. The decision to have the T-Rex attack in that setting amplified vulnerability. The mechanical head of the animatronic had to be positioned precisely above the set structure. The destruction of the restroom walls required breakaway materials that could collapse safely. What viewers see as chaotic was highly engineered. The symbolic nature of the moment was deliberate. The lawyer represented corporate arrogance collapsing under primal force. That thematic layer often goes unnoticed beneath the spectacle. The film changed paleontology enrollment worldwide. After release, universities reported increased enrollment in paleontology programs. Museums saw spikes in attendance. Dinosaur research gained renewed funding and cultural relevance. The impact extended beyond box office numbers. Michael Crichton and Spielberg had inadvertently reignited global fascination with prehistoric life. For years, this influence was anecdotal. Later academic discussions confirmed the measurable surge in interest. Few films directly influenced scientific curiosity on that scale. Jurassic Park did not just entertain, it reshaped cultural imagination about extinct species. Bonus fact, the T-Rex screen time is surprisingly short. Despite dominating memory, the T-Rex appears on screen for only a few minutes. Most of its presence is built through suggestion, shadows, sound, partial reveals. The restraint was intentional. Spielberg understood that mystery sustains fear longer than constant exposure. The limited screen time magnified impact. Audiences remember the dinosaur as omnipresent, yet it is used sparingly. That discipline helped prevent visual fatigue and kept the illusion powerful decades later. More than 3 decades later, Jurassic Park still feels alive because its secrets were built on risk, invention, and careful restraint. The breakthroughs were not accidents, they were calculated gambles. And sometimes the biggest revolutions in cinema happen quietly behind the roar.